This is Robert Capuccio. Welcome to the Self-Help Antidote, a weekly dose of reason, perspective, and insight, where we challenge conventional thinking and explore authentic strategies and insights around personal transformation. Our commitment to you is to bring you some of the world's leading experts in the domains of fitness, wellness, coaching, and behavior change, separating fact from fallacy. Tiffanee Cook, welcome to your show and mine. Roll with the punches and the Self-Help Antidote.
Bobby Capuccio, my favorite human.
I completely stole that introduction from you last week where you welcomed me to my show and your show. I was like, that was really cool. I'm going to do the same intro.
You did it flawlessly.
Thank you. But it was an imitation. There was no originality in that intro. I was just like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do Tiffanee's intro. You know, this is a long history between us. People are like, well, why'd you start your own podcast? Well, because Tiffanee Cook started a podcast and I wanted one.
and who did you get to help you start it?
Tiffanee Cook. Well, Craig Hopper helped. He would like ring me every 3 days and go, did you do a podcast yet? Why are you so lazy? Tiffanee has one. What are you doing with your life?
It was he like, if that Nuffy has one, you definitely need to have one.
Oh, he told you about the first conversation?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think those were his exact words, actually. You got a really good memory.
Yep. Oh, great memory. That's definitely one of my traits.
No, but I was in the middle of moving. He's like, hurry up. I'm always in the middle of moving somewhere. Mm-hmm. I noticed like I have a pathological obsession with moving house. It's like I'm someplace for us. That's it. I've got to pick up. I've got to move house. I've been here for like 6 weeks already. This is crazy.
I remember calculating in my 20s. I feel like maybe I was late 20s, but I remember calculating the amount of places I'd lived in, how many times I'd moved, and it equated to more than one a year in the first 2.5 decades of my life. I was like, God, that is unstable. And then I remember the first time I moved into a place and it was going to be short term, and then I stayed there 10 years. So I was like, oh, I get it.
See, that's the key. Think short term. You don't have all that pressure on it. It's like, oh my God, you're not like, oh, I'm going to be here forever. And you just wind up staying. Yeah. But when I used to move, it was because it was work-related issues. Well, it's always been work-related issues, hasn't it? Well, not always, but most of the time. So I would wind up moving thousands of kilometers, like every time I moved, which is exhausting. I think I have move fatigue now. I just thinking about moving house. Sometimes I shudder if I'm walking down the street and I see just like an empty box lying there. I think I was traumatized.
Did it excite you or did it unravel you? Like, what was it?
In the beginning, it excited me, and then it just started to exhaust me. And then I'm like, all right, enough of this already. I stayed in one place like 5 years with Ames. I was like, oh, this is amazing. This is just fantastic. Wait, no, I didn't stay in that. Well, I traveled a lot, and then I moved to Singapore. I have a problem. I think I have a problem. My friends used to just, Capuccio, what is wrong with you? Settle down, Capuccio. It's like, why do you care so much? It's like my moving is actually causing you distress. They're like, yes, I'm experiencing vicarious distress. And not only knowing you're moving every 6 months, but listening to you talk about your moves incessantly. I had a woman break up with me once because I just would not stop talking to her about moving and paint schemes. And now that I'm saying it out loud, I'm like, oh wow, she really had a fair point, didn't she?
Yeah, but valid.
Wow. Okay. And she just moved to a gorgeous, she actually lives near me, very close to me. And she just moved to what I think
maybe that's another red flag.
No, because I moved across the country, right? And then she moved across the country.
Right next to you.
No, so we were both in Southern California, and then I moved right next to her. And then she moved into, I think, the most beautiful building in all of Long Beach. It looks like a giant castle that a kid put together with a Lego set. It is just stunning, which gives you a little bit of insight into my taste in architecture. Yeah, it looks like this giant Lego set. It's spectacular.
You should be an architect.
Yeah. And it's absolutely stunning. It looks like something out of a storybook. It looks like a 25-story castle. It's curved. I'm like, I'm not saying I was jealous, but she's like, oh, my new building. I might have cursed at her under my breath a little bit, but no, I'm amazed. I'm like, that building is perfect. So I'm going to be like the person who's like, oh yeah, housewarming. Wait, Bobby, we did 3 housewarmings last week. I know you're happy for me, but no, let's do another one.
The house is warm.
Yeah. It's like, you keep doing housewarming. It's like, you're like nearly a roommate at this point. You need to back off. So anyway, talking about, actually, there's no segue whatsoever. So I'm just going to jump into it.
Good try, though. Good try.
So talking about something that has nothing to do with housewarming whatsoever.
You need to brush up on your improv, bro.
I know. Luckily, Dave is not listening to this episode. Mm-hmm. I don't think he listens to my podcast regularly. I don't know. He could be like a closet listener, but he's never mentioned anything about it. But if he is listening, I'll know about it because he'll write me a scathing email. Yeah. So, I was listening to your episode, and it's clear you've learned nothing from me. Years. Absolutely nothing. And it's just like, oh boy, that's just one more person I've disappointed. Anyway, last week, I think we talked about people who arrive at erroneous conclusions about why people do the things that they do and how, that causes people to show up in a way that facilitates antagonism and then even misinterpret that. There's a principle in coaching around looking for the best stuff because we always want to correct people. And some people want to do this because they have the best intentions in mind, don't they? It's like, I really care about people. I expect a lot out of them. And they're almost hoping to initiate a sort of Pygmalion effect that if I raise my expectations, people's behaviors and performance will rise to my level of expectancy. But if you look at the research, right? Look at Jacobson and Rosenthal. Expectancy is usually effective when you have a high expectation and express that through a constructive view of the individual. That's the Pygmalion effect. It's not like, you suck. I know you could do better. You're shit. If only you had more of this, that, and the other thing. I don't know what that other thing is, but if you only had more of it, you'd perform better. And usually that's a covert way of saying, if you were a little bit less like you and a little bit more like me, I'd like you a lot better. That usually, surprisingly, does not elicit trust and relationship-based performance. But if you look at Jacobson and Rosenthal, they were under the misconception that their classrooms in the San Francisco Bay Area were filled with the best and the brightest children. I almost said breast and brightest. Yes, they had classrooms filled with chicken breast. It was like kind of weird. And I don't know. I think they had a couple of ham sandwiches in there. Wrong research study. So yes. So we're giving you the most intelligent ham sandwiches in the entire school district. I don't even know where I'm going with this today, but they were under the assumption that their students were all extremely gifted, and they treated them as if they were, and they weren't. They were average students randomly chosen, and their performance did in fact rise to the teacher's level of expectation. And you could summarize that as, my belief is greater than your doubt. A beautiful story of this is there was a young girl born in Clarksville, Tennessee in 1940, I believe. And she was born at 4.5 pound body weight. And premature birth weight is a serious issue, especially in 1940. And the doctors told her mother that she wasn't going to survive the night. They were trying to emotionally prepare her for the loss of this child. Now, this child was her 20th child, mind you, in a family of 22 children. That's a side note. And the family did not have a lot of money, and they were born in one of the poorest areas of Tennessee. And it turns out that this kid did survive, but by the time she was about 5 years old, she nearly died twice more by suffering from double pneumonia and scarlet fever. And then her health started to improved rapidly, as did her intelligence, her curiosity, her energy. And then as soon as that happened, a year later, people just thought she was a little bit clumsy until her legs started to weaken and deform underneath her. And she was diagnosed with polio and lost the use of her legs. She could not even walk without the assistance of leg braces and crutches. She would just collapse without them. And the doctors, once again, had a fatalistic attitude saying, okay, she is never going to walk. This girl's going to be a cripple for the rest of her life. And once you got to that point, because you were stricken by polio, like having normal use of your legs was not something that you could be optimistic about. That's pretty much where the way you were going to be, and you had to work around that. Her mother wouldn't accept that. I don't know if that was just heartbreak and denial. I don't know if that was ignorance. And by ignorance, I don't mean lack of intelligence, but lack of medical knowledge. I don't know if that was just an overwhelming display of faith, which is persistence in the absence of a guarantee. I'm not really sure what drove it, but she believed that this girl can walk, and she held that space for her. And a lot of times forced her to engage in excruciatingly difficult and painful and long, arduous bouts of physical therapy day in, day out, because she would not be denied. And years later, when this girl was a teenager, she was encouraged by a group of people, I think it was in her church, to walk down the aisle without her crutches. Oh. And she stumbled and fell and grabbed herself and pulled herself up by the pulpits. And she walked sloppily, but she walked without the assistance of her crutches, which cultivated just a modicum of belief, but enough belief to allow Ed Temple, which was her high school's track and field coach, to encourage her to do all absurd things for someone stricken with polio, join the track and field team. And she competed, but finished dead last in her very first race. But she crossed the finish line. She completed an entire race. And that is so inspiring. I've heard people say, like, every miracle begins with an impossibility, and that's a seeming impossibility, but the story doesn't even come close to ending there. What's so extraordinary is you fast forward to September 7th, 1960 in Rome, and this woman goes down as being the greatest female runner of all times, winning 3 gold medals in 1 Olympic Games. That is Wilma Rudolph. And she was one of the fastest women in all of human history, someone who was condemned to be a cripple for the rest of her life because she was stricken with polio at such a young age. And that was an example of somebody holding space and unwavering belief. My belief is greater than your doubt, because that kid growing up being told by doctors, with authoritative degrees and expertise and demeanors, that diagnosis was pretty final in her mind. She had tons of doubt, I can imagine, but her mother was holding that space. I know you have doubt, but my belief is greater. And that is one of the elements of coaching. And as much as we look to be critical sometimes, whether we're well-meaning or whether we're just like miserable little gits, and we struggle so much in our own lives that we project our frailties onto other people, because I think that's pretty weak. Like, when you're constantly judging and condemning, you do that in your mind, you're projecting strength. I think you're projecting just the opposite, because it really doesn't take much. It doesn't require much. It doesn't demand much sacrifice or investment to do that with somebody continually. Tearing people down does not lift you up. Pointing out what people are weak does not make you appear strong. But when you are constantly holding space to look for attributes, point those out, and encourage their expression in other people, not only is that far more effective practically and based on the literature, the research, but I think that is such a strong position. You are a purveyor of encouragement. Like, there are people, their life will be better, not just by the outcome, but the experience of being around you. That is power.
I love this so much. Yesterday, I recorded a solo podcast after having a conversation with a guest, Al Viney. Neither of these episodes are up as we're speaking about it now. My episode will come up first and then Al's will drop probably the next week. And my conversation with Al talks about exactly this, and it played on my mind for days until I was like, I'm going to do a solo episode pulling that part of the conversation out because it was so powerful, and I called the conversation Say It. And so what happened, long story short, she was involved in an accident which left her with a physical impairment. Prior to that, she had plans to be a professional athlete. That was her path, and she'd just graduated from school and all of this stuff was going on, and next minute she has this impairment. 8 years later, she was on the football field as a runner, as a helping out the team, right? Because she was coaching. She was being a coach and a runner and just doing what she could in sport. And she ran over to the sidelines and some random person said to her, "Hey, why aren't you playing?" And she said, like, she didn't know if she really wanted to have the sympathy conversation. She didn't want to highlight the disability. So she was like, whatever she said, she kind of deflected a little bit. And then the person said, "But why?" And she said, "Well, I've got this impairment." And they just looked at her in the eyes and said, "Well, why aren't you doing a para sport? Why aren't you competing in para sport?" And the look in their eyes, so 8 years after this impairment, that ignited the realization in her that someone saw something and she could still be an athlete. She set Australian records, competed in the last Olympics, and she'll be going to the next Olympics in 2024, Paralympics. And I just thought to myself, how many things go unsaid? How many world records, inventions, Olympic athletes are sitting on the sidelines where a stranger's observation, if honestly conveyed to them, could change the path of not only their life, but Australia, a country, the ripple effect of that is
millions of people, and
yes.
you were just that one person that cared enough, was compassionate enough to say something. Now think about that. Like, think about your social media thread where it's like, what is the most horrible thing I could say to this person?
Yeah.
Like, and people are like, oh, words don't. Did I tell you that there was this anti-bullying post? And every single comment was pro-bullying, like the benefits of bullying and how bullying makes you tougher and feelings aren't a real thing. First of all, learn your freaking neuroscience before you say something that absolutely idiotic. And it's like, what a collection of pieces of shit that are in favor of children getting bullied. Like, how miserable is your life? But it could have the opposite effect. If feelings don't matter, this whole conversation, if words don't matter, is bullshit, because this is one example because if words don't matter, they don't matter, right? So if somebody could say something encouraging and that can change the trajectory of someone's entire life, what do you think a disparaging or hurtful comment can do to somebody?
Yeah.
It's just like, and again, you feel like feelings don't matter. One person even like wrote sticks and stones. Like, are you 5? Like, and you're talking about not letting people's words negatively affect you and be stronger. Meanwhile, you are posting the weakest shit. Someone broke you somewhere along the way. You are fucking broken. How do you take that position? It's just, if you made a point of looking specifically for, okay, what's an attribute that this person's demonstrating? What do I see in this person? I mean, I'm thinking about like Cus D'Amato and Mike Tyson. There's just one person seeing something in another. And, speaking about Mike Tyson, one of his former trainers, Teddy Atlas, one of his really good friends saw something in me and changed the entire trajectory of my life. And it's like, with all the frailties and with all of the idiosyncrasies and iniquities that make up a human being, because we all have amazing attributes and we have dark attributes that a lot of times we don't want to face. We don't even want to acknowledge that. But I think, if there's no meaning to life other than the meaning you give it, I don't know, there might be a cosmic meaning to it. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But if life's meaning is the meaning you attach to it, think about the meaning of life being how in even small ways can I encourage other people? What can I say that's not complimentary, not like great job, bro, I think you're amazing. That doesn't mean anything. I can't leverage it, but I see this in you. This is an observation. So I have a friend of mine who is he's been on Harp's show. He is probably one of the most widely respected experts in not just the health and fitness industry, but now the well-being industry globally. This guy is absolutely brilliant. And I think at one point he always felt like he wasn't enough. And then he was speaking at a conference that we used to go to every year. And Paul Chek was finishing his presentation and they were kind of like passing each other. They had the same room. And Paul pulled him over and said, you are one of the most brilliant people in this industry. You don't need to be like anybody else. You have everything you need. And literally that day, he was never the same.
Wow.
Just one person paying attention enough to notice a level of doubt and insecurity, being perceptive enough to identify where that's coming from, and then see something in this person that they might not have seen, or they saw, but they kind of doubted it, and changed that person's life. How many people have gone to this person's presentations and like, that was one of the best presentations I've ever heard in my life. I understand this. I'm inspired to do this. I want to sign up for this. Like, you weren't just talking to that person. You were helping everyone that person has helped since. Think about that personal meaning.
Yeah. And even more so, like Paul Chek being in the same space there and having no level of needing to be more of an authority or be more important, or, like just open and realizing that if someone else's ability and presence on stage skyrockets because of what he says, it doesn't jeopardize anything about his ability on stage doing what he does. Mm-hmm. I think that's notable as well. You can say to your competitors, you can encourage your competitors in the same industry who are doing the same things as you. Like, how many times Harps has said to me, if your podcast got bigger than mine, I'd be happy for you. Like, he gives advice. Like, we're in the same space. We're both doing similar things, and he can still separate that one person's success has no real effect on your success in that way. It's not like a bloody seesaw.
Logan talked about in Tribal Leadership. I love that book. I reference it constantly, where it talks about the different levels of a tribe, from fragmented and highly toxic to highly cohesive. And it's kind of like in a level 4 tribe, which is pretty evolved. It's we're great, they suck. So think about Pepsi versus Coke, right? Think about, Crest versus Colgate. Like, the Crest people, we all love each other. Probably maybe not at this point, but it's like,
what a Crest?
It's a brand of toothpaste.
Sorry to my Aussie listeners, I don't think we have that here.
Yeah, I'm speaking out of turn. Look at me, I'm so presumptuous.
Oh, we do, and I'm just a Colgate advocate. And haven't noticed it on the shelves.
Yeah, so the Colgate people would love you. You are absolutely part of their tribe. You think I've been an expat enough, but at this point, I would realize your brands don't necessarily transfer. Sometimes I don't learn a thing, do I? But it's almost like one sports team. We're amazing, but they're the enemy. Yeah. Like, they suck, and so you have that intra-team cohesion and affinity and encouragement. But a level 5 tribe is where the lines between us and them are blurred. There is no they, right? It's we. It's not me. It's we. It's not they. It's us. And you don't look at people as competitors. Or if you do, you leverage them like, okay, I can learn from that person. I could get better as a result of that person. When we collide, it sharpens one another like steel on steel.
Oh, yeah. I love that. Somebody used that term, that iron sharpens iron. They used that term.
Iron sharpens iron. Does steel sharpens? I'm just making all types of errors today.
Well, I don't know. That's the first time I'd heard it, and I really loved it when I can't remember the context. I was giving that talk at the recent networking event I spoke of recently, and one of the people made that comment, but I can't remember what referenced it, but I loved it. I was like, oh, that is, and it was about that. It was about getting good people in a room and bouncing off each other so that we all get better.
Yeah. It's when you think about the experience of being you and what it feels like to be you, if you're out there intentionally, not in a way, again, not compliments, not cheerleading, not in a way that's empty, but you are constantly looking for what's right with another person. And how do I communicate this with enough specificity that my feedback is actionable if that person is so inclined to accept it? At some point, you're going to feel pretty good about yourself. Even if that's not your main intention, by default, it's like, you know what? It's kind of pretty cool being me. I like doing this. I like interacting with other people like this. I like holding this space. I like being this person for people.
Yeah.
I was listening to Alan Watts. I love listening to Alan Watts. And he was talking about how you affect yourself and others by looking at work as play. And we've talked about this stuff.
Yeah.
I was listening to it. I was like, yeah, my God, I've had that same thought where people are like, oh, you got to suffer. You've got to hate it. You're better at what you do, and you're going to do it longer, harder, with more consistency if you love it. Now, not every aspect of what you're doing, like I'm putting together an expense report. I don't love that. But 80% of what you do, like, think about it as playing. He was talking about a bus driver. Think about someone sitting down all day and they got to be on a bus route. They have to learn every stop. They have to swerve in and out of traffic in this giant mechanical thing. They have to avoid accidents. If they get into an accident, they're in a lot of trouble, a lot more trouble than me or you would be if we got into a car accident. Then they have to, well, in the past anyway, when that seminar was being given, they have to take money, make change for people. Now they don't have to do any of that. Really. But you have all these things. If you look at that as work, it's going to be hell. Every day you're going to wake up and just take just take refuge in your coffee. And when that's over, it's like, oh, I've got to go do this. But if you look at that as a game, like if this was a game, swerving in and out of traffic, I got to pick up somebody and then drop them off. And when somebody gets on the bus, I'm going to engage with them. I'm not just going to make change. I'm going to make conversation. All right. Let's see if I can not only get them to their destination, but make them laugh on that journey. It's a game. It's a point system. And there are bus drivers like that. Like I come from, New York City, where, people don't drive typically. I mean, if you want to get for where you're going in about twice the time and triple the frustration, own a car. Otherwise, public transport, the infrastructure is really well laid out. And sometimes if you're taking like the same bus, same route, same time, you'll see the same bus driver. And some of them are hilarious. And it's not just transactional, it's interpersonal. And you look forward to these people. This person probably gets home. Now, it's not like they're paying so much attention to people's experiences that, I just passed the bus stop, left all those people standing there. Again, my supervisor is going to be so upset because I've missed half the stops for the third day in a row. Nope. They're probably going to be better at their job. And when they get home, do you think they're exhausted? So they're working for the same amount to pay, but they found a way to turn their work into play. They're having fun while they're doing what they're doing. And it doesn't necessarily get them a raise or a promotion. It very well might. It doesn't hurt, but what they benefit from is at the end of the day, they feel good about what they do. They feel like they've made people's days just a little bit better. Something so mundane as your morning commute to work is something that some people might look forward to. Like my mother, she would have the same bus driver all the time, and she would constantly talk about this person because this person made their day. And when you get home, you have time and energy to invest in people and things that are important to you because you're not so physically and emotionally drained.
I was just listening to a podcast with Andrew Huberman and Tim Ferriss this week, and the part of it's a really long one. Part of it was about, they were talking about volunteering and how when we do things voluntary, how most people do the bare minimum required, but actually what is to be gained by doing it, like doing something as if you are not making money from it. Like I remember
when somebody volunteers, they do the bare minimum required.
Yeah. So if you're volunteering or you're doing something, you know, pro bono, you're doing bare minimum. I remember when a couple of years, obviously before the pandemic, when Harps was running the 3-day events, and that's where we'd first met in person. It was one of those events. And I'd been to one, and then after that I said, you know, can I help at any of your events? So I crewed at the events. Now, not only did I do that voluntary, and that's going down on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, all day, just helping out, doing whatever needs to be done. I took time off work, so it actually cost me to do it because I lost Saturday's wage, and Saturday as a personal trainer is usually a fairly decent day, so I'd forego all of my income on a Saturday to go and do that. And I remember you used to say, why do you do this? Because you come and you've got great energy and you're enjoying yourself and everything, but you know, like, you're not getting paid to be there. What do you get out of this? And because I was like, well, I paid for that experience once, and I value it so much. I want, like a little sponge, I want to soak in. You can't soak in 3 days worth of information and keep it. So I want to soak in that information again. But I also, at events like that, like attracts like. So you get into a space and the intention is learning and betterment and how do we think, how do we do, how do we behave, what can we improve in life? And you got 100 and something people all wanting to do that, all in that energetic space. I was like, I've met good people, and I've got relationships and friendships with people I connected with who were in that, who do that. And I think we need to approach everything like that.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Where people who volunteer, like you said, like they put in less effort. What I've observed is people who volunteer are on fire very often because it's not, I'm doing this, so I just got to get paid, which is fine, but they're doing it for an intrinsic reason. It's the process, it's the meaning of the thing. Like people who volunteer at conferences because they're in love with education. They'll run all over for you. Like they're incredibly invested and they're working really hard and they're impassioned. They're excited. They want to be a presenter one day. And you see kind of like the opposite emerge and show up. You know, even Frederick Gage, when he was doing experiments on rats, volitional versus non-volitional exercise. You know, when it was forced exercise and non-volitional, the benefit to the brain was dramatically decreased because of the chronically elevated levels of stress hormones, because they hated it. Where volitional exercise, even something as simple as a running wheel, would elicit a much greater adaptive response because it was enjoyable.
It reminds me of another conversation around, like, I can't remember where I had this, whether it was a talk or an actual podcast, but talking about the journey and the destination, right? The idea of getting blinkered. I think this was in my presentation at the networking event. We get into something, right, and we get blinkered. So the journey is, so we say eyes on the prize, right? Eyes on the prize. We like to use that term, you know, keep your eyes on where you want to go, look at the goal. But then we get blinkered by the details, right? Because also we say the journey is the destination. So eyes on the prize means the prize is the destination. So eyes on the destination, but then the journey is the destination. But we get blinkered. We start looking at all the analytics of, let me put this into a networking context, which I used in this talk, obviously, because it was for networking. So business networking. We do it to connect with other people, to build a referral base, essentially to grow and get business and knowledge. But often, because you get into a group like that or a system like that, you pay, so you invest so that you can be a part of it. So then there is an expectation or a realization that you also need to get financial income from it. You need to get money out of it because you're investing in it. So then the destination, we get blinkered by, but I've got to make money. And all of the things that actually create the success, we have blinkered out because we're like, but I'm not getting money. But the focus on the getting of the money means that the interactions and the focus on relationships and the giving and the just sharing of information and all the things that creates trust and certainty and connection and relationships, all of that gets sidelined.
Okay, I think there's a distinction here between I'm doing this not for the sake of doing it or because I'm invested in it, I love it, I'm committed to the cause. I'm doing it because there's an expectation of reciprocity there.
Yeah. Yes. Right. So people that deliberately, obviously we deliberately do everything, but people who, can't think of the word, but whose intention is, I'll volunteer for this so that I get that. So the expectation is I want that. So I'll do this for now, rather than I wanted to be in the environment with the workshop. So I wanted to build the relationships in there. I didn't ever expect to be working. I mean, I wanted to, but I never expected to be working with Harps for Harps and be a part of the U project.
See, that's where, okay, now when you're talking about volunteering, that's where unbalanced external expectations could be insidious. I'm not talking about self-expectancy, like I expect a lot out of myself. That's a very powerful, or can be quite a powerful driving force, as long as that expectation leaves room for margin of error, because, when you're trying something new, you're going to kind of suck at it most of the time. But when you have this imposition of expectations on other people, it leads to disappointment. And a lot of the time it leads to anger. It leads to bitterness, cynicism, and things that kill your creative capacity out there in the world. I'm speaking from personal experience, because I think I went from being someone who didn't expect a lot from people. Like, and if something happened or it didn't work out, I was like, oh, well, that just didn't work out, to someone who had an expectation that people would respond in a certain way because that's the right way to respond. They went on with their lives and it hurt me. I heard somebody say something. One of my mentors had said something in a workshop, and he said, you will be effective to the degree that you are able to let go of your expectations of people, and you will be disappointed. You will be defeated to the degree that you can't. And it's not like, okay, I would expect kind of like that Irish song, Whiskey in the Jar. I would not expect my partner to steal everything whilst I'm sleeping and turn it over to the person who I stole it from, who wants to kill me. Yeah, that song didn't. Like, I have every right to expect loyalty from my partner or from my friends. That's a reasonable expectation. But if it's like, well, I'm going to volunteer, so they're going to give me a job later. Well, then, yeah, it's like, I'm not getting anything out of this. You're going to feel like that, but I'm getting something potentially in the future, or I'm going to go buy you lunch, not because I want to be generous and I like making you happy. I enjoy your company. I'm going to buy you lunch, so maybe you'll refer me to somebody because you'll owe me one. And then when you don't do that, I get upset. But I had duplicitous intentions in the first place. I was acting dishonestly, not only with you, but with me. So if you're volunteering under that guise, if then versus, wow, I get to do this, because people who are intrinsically motivated to volunteer a lot of times are far more energized and engaged than people who are doing it for the money. So I think that's a factor, and it's kind of like, even with what we started talking about, if I'm constantly looking for things in other people that are powerful and inspiring that I can highlight that they might not see about themselves. If I'm doing that, so they'll be indebted to me or somehow they'll reciprocate. One, I lose the benefit of feeling how being that person is going to make me feel. And two, like I'm going to stop doing that after a while, because when I don't get the response that I think I should be getting, or worse, I think someone owes me that response, that's a trap. And I don't get that, I start to become resentful. And resentful people don't walk around seeing the beauty and capacity in other people. I start to try to force my agenda. I mean, think about this in a sales situation, right? Overcoming objections versus, I mean, and I'm not saying you only would utilize this in your interactions, but let's say I use appreciative inquiry, right? Let's say I ask questions that help elicit memories about high performance. Now, let me just say, a lot of people focus on the close in sales. They don't focus enough on the open. If you don't have rapport, engagement, if people don't feel safe with you, they feel threatened, like good luck, because you're already hindering yourself through your own attitudes and behaviors. Like we talked about that last week. Like, when is it you that's the problem and you're displacing that onto someone else? I think we refer to that as what Stephen Rolnick and William J. Miller termed discord, where the antagonistic response you get is based on the attitudes and behaviors of the therapist or the coach in this case, not the patient or the client. It's the same thing in sales. But if I have rapport and there is trust, I mean, give me an objection, any objection, so something that's a barrier to a decision.
But I don't have the money.
Okay. So I could try to convince you that this is worth it. You know, I could try to convince you that there's a benefit that if you only do this, or I could break up the payments or all this stuff that people try. Or, you know, first, okay, fine. Well, if you did have the money, I understand that money is a concern, but if you did have the money, is this something that you would be committed to doing? If it's no, well, that's just a no. But if it's yes, well, tell me a little bit more about that. And then, can you remember a time when you were in a position where money was really tight and you weren't really sure that investment was going to work out for you, but you invested in yourself, you believed in yourself, and even though it might have been difficult, you succeeded anyway? Tell me about that time. And whatever story they come up with is far more powerful than anything you're going to say or convince them of. You know, and that's like, well, you know, I don't have the time. You know, so it's like, okay, yeah, understood. You know, did you ever feel like that before, where you were pursuing something that was difficult? It was challenging. It was admittedly a struggle, and you didn't think you had the time or some other resource, but you did it anyway, and it worked out for you. Wasn't easy, but it worked out for you. Tell me about that time. Because when you get obnoxious responses and like one word answers, you probably didn't do enough rapport building.
Yes,
or you
100%.
did a lot of presenting and you did not do a lot of inquiry. You handled that person as a salesperson trying to get a sale rather than a consultant who was literally invested in solving a problem, regardless of whether or not that resulted in a sale. So a lot of the you know who these salespeople are in role plays. Like, you know, those sales meetings where, oh, let's role play. All right, Jim and Jane. So, and
bloody hate role plays.
Oh, and one person's playing the part of the salesperson. The other person is the prospect or the guest or whatever. And they are just giving that salesperson such a hard time. I'm like, oh, that's what shows up for you, because you generate that shit, because people are transactions for you, aren't they? You know, I don't have to, I just got to get out of here. I just want to see prices. It's like, whoa, okay. Like, who you are in that role play is what happens to you because of who you are when you're sitting down with that person. I can tell you exactly where your mindset is and what you're most focused on. But if you think about it, and I'm not saying appreciative, I'm not saying like looking back at a time when they succeeded in the past is the best way to handle every objection. Sometimes it's absolutely not. But just using it as an example, it's a lot better than trying to convince somebody of something. And if you have safety, if you have trust, and if people are being honest with you, there's always a time where because the next question is, well, how did you do that? What was that attribute? What was it inside of you that was most critical to allowing you to persevere, allowing you to succeed? Because a lot of times I will handle a sales situation same way I handle a coaching conversation. The only difference is in a coaching conversation, I will not press someone to make a definitive decision in every situation. Sometimes I'm more directive and I will. Sometimes I follow and I won't. A lot of times I use a combination of both and I use more guiding. But in a sales situation, I think you have an ethical responsibility to ask for the sale, because people are always hesitant and reluctant, especially when a decision matters, and not just matters because of the size of the investment, but the context of the commitment. And if you don't ask, not only are you not getting a sale, but think about this, right? How many times have you heard this where, I didn't know if I was going to join the gym, but I decided to just go ahead and give it a try. And that was 3 years ago, and their lives are so much better. You're robbing someone of that situation if you don't. And a lot of times that's how I've helped people get over fear of asking for the sale. It's not about rejection. It's not about a yes or a no. Whether they say yes or no, there'll be another guest. Trust me. You'll have another chance at this. It doesn't matter. But for that person, this might be their only opportunity. It's not your only opportunity, but it might be their only opportunity. So be okay with a no, but at least give them a chance to say yes to themselves.
Such a good perspective. Do you know what I really admire in you?
My taste in scarves.
And hats as well, hats and scarves. Nice ensemble today, but it's your ability to wrap up and close podcasts. You're so good at it. See what I'm doing there? My positive
You know what I admire about you?
What?
Your ability to subtly and gently say something without resorting to, okay, you never shut the fuck up, do you, Cappuccio? We need to wrap this up. You could have just as easily said that, because we both know I have zero ability to wrap up a podcast. It's like you were talking about Tim Ferriss earlier, who does like epically long podcasts.
Yeah.
Tim Ferriss would listen to like one of our episodes and go, oh, Cappuccio, come on. How long is this thing going to go on? It's just like, anyway.
True.
So if you're listening, I think you've pretty much caught on that we are wrapping up this episode at this point. And I just want to say thank you so much for being here and listening. We love that. We love that you guys listen, and we hope you enjoyed it. We hope you got a couple of cool takeaways, insights.
And let us know. Let us know. Do you know, hey, Bobby, do you know that people can comment on Spotify episodes now in the Spotify app? Yes.
Really?
Yep.
I didn't even know that. Wow. I can't wait to go. I can't comment on our own episode. That's so egotistical. But I can't wait to comment on other stuff that has nothing to do with this episode.
All right. Thanks, everyone. See ya.
Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Visit us at theselfhelpantidote.com to share your feedback, insights, and recommendations on what topics you'd like us to explore in the future.